Compression isn't an easy topic to master, and people spend years really getting to grips with the intricacies of a compressor and how they work. Now, a lot of people understand how the threshold works, which is when the compressor kicks in, how the ratio works, which is how much the compressor is going to clamp down on the audio. But after those two parameters, attack time is really important, and the attack time that you set is going to have a huge impact on the tone, on the way that the compressor acts and shapes the source, and also it's going to have an impact on the attack of the notes, the transients. And in this video I've got 3 tips for dialing in the perfect attack time every time, and I'm going to show you step by step my technique for finding the right attack time for an audio source. So that's all to come. Now, my first tip is to think of attack time as attack amount, because that's essentially what you're doing. When you tweak the attack time, you're telling the compressor how quickly to clamp down on the audio source. So if the compressor clamps down really quickly, i.e. a fast attack time, it's not letting through the attack and the transient of the note, the very first impact of the note. So for example, a pick or plectrum hitting a guitar string, or vocals, it's normally the consonant, the first word. So consonant, that that's the attack, and that's super important. So if the compressor is really fast, it's going to clamp down on that. But if the compressor is slow and it's a slow attack time, that transient, that attack of the note is going to get through the compressor because it's not clamping down fast enough. So then you have more attack. So think of attack time as a way of dialing in how much attack there is on the note. So a slow attack time means a lot of attack, and a fast attack time means not much attack. So let me give you an example on vocals, because I feel like they're a good example where you can clearly hear the difference. So I'm going to start with a really fast attack time, and this is really over the top compression, just for the sake of demonstration, so you can really hear what's going on. So let's start with something around 100 milliseconds.
Get out of the room, nah, but
So you can hear that, especially on that word but. Let's go back to that.
we ran out, nah, but
So listen to that attack coming through.
I guess
And guess. You can hear the attack of the note. Now have a look at what happens when I make the attack time really fast. Have a listen.
but I guess we ran out,
You lose that attack.
nah, but I guess
It's still there, but it's been clamped down a lot. So let's compare the two. I'm going to move from a slow attack time to a fast attack time, and you're going to hear the attack slowly going away. It becomes less and less aggressive, and it becomes thick and heavy as the attack time moves to the left, i.e. getting lower.
nah, but I guess we ran out of luck. My head is played, my heart is stopped by stupid little things.
So on the right, it sounded clear and aggressive. It was really sticking out of the mix, if it was in a mix, not in solo. But then on the left, when we've got a fast attack time, it sounds really thick and heavy. So think of your attack knob as controlling the amount of attack, rather than worrying about the time, rather than worrying about the exact amount in milliseconds or microseconds. Just think about it controlling the amount of attack. So that's tip 1. Tip number 2 is to make sure you know how your plugin works, because a lot of compression plugins work in different ways. This one here, the stock Pro Tools plugin, of course, we've got an exact reference in milliseconds. So up here it's 300 milliseconds, down here if I go to the left it's 10 microseconds. So on the left we've got a fast attack time, and on the right we've got a slow attack time, because a millisecond is more than a microsecond. But now if I open up the analog modeling compressor in Pro Tools, which is the BF76, and this is the same as pretty much any analog modeling compressor, it's actually the other way around. On the left, we've got a slow attack, 1. And this doesn't relate to 1 millisecond. This is just 1 out of 7. There's no time reference here. And on the right, I've got a fast attack time. And this is the other way around to that digital compressor, because here, on the right, we've got a slow attack time, and on the left, fast. But here, on the analog one, on the left is slow, and on the right is fast, so it's flipped. So here, we're actually increasing the number, and by increasing the number from 1 to 7, we're increasing the attack time, which is actually making the attack time go lower. It can get a bit confusing, but if you're using analog modeling, think of it as low is slow, and then high is speeding up. So you're thinking of it rather in terms of microseconds, you're thinking of it in speed. So low is slow, low speed. High is fast, a high speed. So make sure you know how your compressor works. The same goes for release. On the 1 is slow, and on 7 is fast. Now, my third and final tip is to always err on the slower side, because when you use really fast attacks, as you heard earlier when I gave you a quick demonstration, it really starts to mess with the vocal, with the guitar, with the bass, whatever you're compressing, and you lose the transients, which are really important for kind of portraying the note and giving you an idea of what the note is. And the timing of it, everything. The transient's super important. So as soon as you start really compressing that by using fast attack times, you're losing a lot of the attack of the music, and suddenly you can get a mix that sounds really overcompressed, really flat and lifeless. Whereas when you use a slow attack time, the transient gets through, the compressor then just clamps down on the rest of the note, but it sounds more musical, it sounds more natural, your mix will still have life, it will still have energy and aggression. So always err on the slower side. So on an analog compressor, this would be towards the left hand side, and on something like the digital Pro Tools stock one, this would be somewhere on the right hand side. If you're looking for milliseconds reference, to me a slower attack is anything above 20, maybe 10 milliseconds. Try not to go too much below 10. That's when you start to get into the danger zone, where you could be compressing the transients too much. Sometimes you want to do that if you want to make it sound thick and heavy. Just make sure you know what you're doing, and always err on the side of caution, more towards slower attack times. So now I'm going to go through my personal process for tweaking the attack time. And this is dependent. I used to do this a lot more than I do now. Generally now I have an intention. So I'll listen to a vocal, and if I want it to sound more aggressive, I'll dial in a slow attack time. If I want it to sound a bit heavier but still a bit aggressive, I'll go for a medium attack time. So I kind of know where I'm going to start. But if you don't have an idea of what you want to do, and you just want to make the signal a bit more consistent, control the dynamics a bit, but you don't want to overcompress it, and you don't want to remove some of the attack, then the best way is to essentially start with a slow attack time and heavy compression so that you can hear what's going on, so a higher ratio and a lower threshold, so the compressor's always engaging, and then just bring this attack time back until you start to lose the aggression and lose the attack, and then back it off a bit. Because then what you're doing is you're bringing it back until you hit that spot where you start to lose the attack, and then you increase the attack speed a bit so that you're not losing any of the aggression, but you're still getting as much compression and as much control as you can. So on this vocal, I've got a really low threshold, -46, really high ratio, 5:3. I'm going to start with slow, and I'm going to bring this back until I start to notice the vocal become a bit lifeless, and then I'm just going to back it off a touch. Let's try that.
Nah, but I guess that we ran out of luck. My head is played, my heart is stopped by stupid little...
So I can hear there, when I start to get to around 5 milliseconds, it starts to sound a lot heavier, maybe a bit more lifeless. The compression's more evident. It doesn't sound as musical. It sounds like it's been heavily compressed. Let's do that again.
Nah, but I guess that we ran out of luck. My head is played, my heart is stopped by stupid...
So there's a clear change in the tone there. So now, if I back it off a bit, maybe to 10 or 15 milliseconds, I know this is just before the point where we start to lose the attack.
Nah, but I guess that we...
So that sounds good to me. So now that I've found an attack time that I like, I can bring the ratio down to, with vocal, somewhere between 2 to 1 I normally go with. Bring the threshold up so it's just applying 2 to 3, maybe up to 5 dB of gain reduction.
Nah, but I guess that we ran out of luck. My head is played, my heart is stopped by stupid little things. Well, they're all that I can say. Like, did you see me standing on the bridge? Couldn't cross it.
So that's great. I'm happy with that. If I bypass this, you'll notice that when I bring the compressor back in, the vocal stays at a similar level. You want to make sure when you're checking your compressor that it's at the same level afterwards as it started. And you'll notice when I bring the compressor back in, it just adds more attack and more aggression to the vocal. So this is bypass.
Nah, but I guess...
Let's bring that back in.
Nah, but I guess that we ran out of luck. My head is played, my heart is stopped by stupid little things. Well, they're all that I can say. Like, did you see me standing on the bridge? Couldn't cross it, but
So that's the kind of sound you're going for. When you get the attack time right, it'll add aggression to a vocal part, to a guitar part, anything else that you might be compressing. And that's just going to mean that you have the best amount of control whilst retaining some of that attack and the transient. Always err on the side of caution. Now, if you are compressing a snare drum or a bass part or something else where it's a really aggressive transient, then you're going to have to use a fast attack time. Because if it's a snare drum, for example, and you want to make it sound a bit thicker, and at the moment you can just only hear the initial attack, then of course you're going to have to use a fast attack time to catch that initial attack, that initial transient, that initial moment of the drumstick hitting the snare. You're going to have to use a fast attack time for that. But apart from those specific use cases where you need a fast attack time, always err on the side of caution, always use a slower attack time. So I hope you found that useful. I'll see you very soon.